now is take you through how some of the big VIP political heavyweights in Uttar Pradesh are likely to fare on the 10th of March. This is data that's being put out on India Today television for the first time, come from the India Today Access My India exit poll, so it's not out in the public domain so far. So if you're watching live right now, we're just about to tell you, and I'll start with Gorakhpur Urban, which is the seat of Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. Maharaj, as they call him, is up against Sabhavati Shukla of the SP and Chandrasekhar Azad Rawat of the Bhim army. Here, and not much surprises here, you've got Yogi Adityanath, who seems very comfortably placed in Gorakhpur. So he's likely to do well on his own home turf in Gorakhpur. Let's go to Karhal, which is where SP chief Akhilesh Yadav comes from. He's up against Professor SP Singh Baghel, who at one time used to be in the security routine of his father. And against Baghel, the Samajwadi Party chief seems comfortably placed. Let's go to Jaswant Nagar, which is where Shivpal Yadav is up against Vivek Sakhya of the SP. Here again, Shivpal Singh Yadav, who's come back to the SP fold, seems to be comfortably placed. He's fighting with on the same side as his nephew and seems to be doing well. Let's now go to Sirathu, which is where Keshav Prasad Maurya, the Deputy Chief Minister, is up against Pallavi Patel of the SP. This poll is suggesting it could be a close fight. Keshav Maurya possibly still in front, but a tough fight between the Deputy Chief Minister and the SP candidate Pallavi Patel. Let's go to Om Prakash Rajbhar's seat in Zahurabad. Here he's up against Kalicharan Rajbhar of the BJP. On his own seat, Om Prakash Rajbhar seems comfortably placed, or he's the more popular candidate in Zahurabad. From there, let's go to Fazil Nagar, which is where Swami Prasad Maurya, this time on an SP ticket, fighting against Surendra Kushwaha. Here you've got the BJP, which seems to be doing well, and that's where I go across to Pradeep Gupta. So a lot of these imports who came in at the last moment left the BJP. There was so much chatter ki hawa badal rahi hai, that's why they're leaving BJP, going to SP. The biggest of them all, Swami Maurya, is struggling on his own seat.
Yes, actually, Rahul, as you mentioned earlier, these are the popularity quotient only. On that day, who was more popular, particularly the party. And here on this seat, Fazil Nagar seat, BJP is more popular than any other party. That's clear. And Swami Prasad Maurya, in fact, has changed his seat from Padrana. Last time he won Padrana, he won from a BJP ticket, and this time he switched the side to SP, and he has switched his seats as well.
You know, it raises questions, Rajdeep, about this hawa. Oh, that all 12 MLAs have come, 3 ministers. It seems Akhilesh is, Akhilesh is doing well. The BJP is a sinking boat. Some of these things that occupy a lot of mind space and television airtime don't end up finally in the same way.
I think the challenge, Rahul, in an election like this is that when a leader leaves a particular party to join another party just before an election, does he take his or her voters with him or her? That's the critical question. There are leaders who have been able to do that successfully in the past, and there are leaders who will struggle.
Who? When Kalyan Singh left, he couldn't carry his load voters. When Uma Bharti left, she couldn't carry her voters.
No, let me give you an example. When a Sharad Pawar, for example, split in Maharashtra, he took his Western Maharashtra Maratha vote with him, and that undermined the Congress in the immediate election that followed. NCP did solidly. If you are a leader who has a mass base that actually is identified with the individual, then there is a fair chance of you taking that vote along. You know, you just now mentioned Om Prakash Rajbhar. The Rajbhars are about 10,000 plus right across large parts of eastern UP. And Om Prakash Rajbhar has emerged as the leading face of the Rajbhar community. Now, it is not as large as the Jatav community, it is not as large as the Yadavs, but it is substantial enough to make a difference in several seats. So, he can win his seat, but can he win you the entire eastern UP? No. Are there other contenders for the Rajbhar vote? Yes, possibly. Has the BJP made a dent in the Rajbhar vote over the last 10 years? Yes. Therefore, Om Prakash Rajbhar has a limited impact. He's at best, a sort of small sub-regional satrap. The point I'm making, Rahul, and this is significant, Akhilesh Yadav's strategy was a well thought out strategy that if I can bring in many of these smaller leaders from the Kurmi Samaj, from the Nonia Samaj, from the Mauryas, I will at least be able to offset possibly some of the large gains the BJP has made among non-Yadav OBCs. The only problem is that while he has managed to get some of the key leaders, have all the followers followed the leaders? Pradeep Gupta's poll seems to suggest, and that's the only evidence I can go by, that that is not the case. The non-Yadav OBCs largely have remained with the BJP, even as significant leaders like a Swami Prasad Maurya have switched sides. Let's also be honest, and this is my final point, the likes of Swami Prasad Maurya are transactional politicians. He was with the BSP.
5 parties.
He has been with Samajwadi Party. 5 parties. He's now with the Samajwadi Party. He's with the BJP and the BSP. Why should I as a voter trust him entirely? I'll tell you a very interesting story. I was in a Nishad area, and this is a warning for the Nishad party as well. I asked somebody, ये संजय निषाद आपके नेता हैं, आप उन्हीं को वोट दोगे ना? He said, sir, वो तो चॉपर में अब जाते हैं, वो और उनके बेटे जो हैं वो तो लखनऊ में होते हैं, दिल्ली में होते हैं. So you see, you have to also convince that voter of your caste community that you are there for him through a crisis. That's when you are able to build a loyalty that is unflinching across parties, and that's not happening with many of these smaller netas of UP.
You know, I want to introduce Yashwant Deshmukh, who's joining us on this broadcast. He's the lead cephalogist of Sea Voter. We've got Shantanu Gupta joining us. Shantanu Gupta is the biographer of Yogi Adityanath. Yashwant, I want you to explain to our viewers, why is it that you think that this poll is actually far tighter than some of the other exit polls, including Access My India, which seems to be suggesting a much bigger victory for the BJP? You're predicting a victory, but in your victory, in your number, it's a much tighter fight. So what is the difference between the two pollsters? You have a similar technique in the sense that you're also now going seat by seat, but what you've come away from with those research tablets is different. Why is that in your view?
I don't think they are different in much ways, Rahul, because in our exit poll, we are looking at 6 or 7% of the gap between the BJP and the Samajwadi Party alliance. Probably Pradeep is getting about 10% lead of the BJP, and with that additionally, which is very much statistically possible. In any case, even with the same vote share, Rahul, it is very much possible to predict 225, 250, 275 or even 300 seats for the BJP. And it is possible to win those many seats either ways. So I am not looking into too much into the vote share, seat share projections of different agencies. What I am looking into is that there is a consistency of all the exit polls, serious ones, which we regard as having a credible history, and most of them are looking at somewhere between 6 to 9 or 10% point of lead of the BJP in vote share, and that itself is a big indicator of things going in one-way direction right now. The leads of having a simple majority, 2/3 majority, or 3/4 majority, I am not going into too much into that, because I am very clear on that the science of surveys, they stop at picking up the winner. The seat share projection is a mathematical extrapolation of the vote shares, and they may differ from agency to agency and the cephalogist to cephalogist. So within the same vote share also, 10 different agencies and cephalogists may come with 10 different variations. What is critical to know,
but where you're defying conventional wisdom, Pradeep, is when you make the point that the BJP is heading for a sweep. Many in the BJP also were saying, A, it's tight, B, it's a seat by seat ki ladai, C will win, but around 230, 240, 250. Even the BJP wasn't thinking that their starting point could be as high as 288.
Rahul, actually political parties talking or their understanding of what is going to be the outcome of the result is in very limited area and circles, and that is the reason why we as political agency exist. and we try and do representative sampling, you know, that is where the big difference is. How can a political party do the assessment on a representativeness? You know, that's the big thing. You know, saying is one thing and doing is another thing. What we as a polling agency do is actually going and doing it. Whereas political party, they do not have this kind of facility. They are listening what people are there.
And they're talking to those who are already believers, mostly.
Mostly, sometime may not be, but it is something that the real voter, which is the 80% in a polling machine, EVM machine, they are not talking to even a one person out of that 80%. Mostly they talk to about these 20%.
No, but remember, in West Bengal, one of the challenges you had, that was about 20% of the voters said they didn't tell you who they voted for, and that
Yes.
became like this big black box for you.
Yes.
In UP and in Punjab, what percentage of voters said, "Hame nahi batana aapko"?
Less than 2%. In UP and Punjab, the beauty is that nobody has any kind of fear factor. They say whomever they have voted for. But Bengal, last 50 years, there is a huge amount of violence, but that was limited to within the political party's cadre base. This time what had happened, right from chief minister being attacked to BJP president and so many big leaders being attacked, also the voters were killed in Kuch Bihar. So you can imagine the kind and amount of fear factor among the voter, and once voter is not ready to speak to a team, then our job ends there itself.
No, but Pradeep, my problem with your fear factor theory is this, that if you say that the voter in Bengal had a fear factor and that's why we got Bengal wrong, then that voter should have told you, I should have lied to you and said I voted for the Trinamool Congress, right? The fear factor should have been that I don't want to be seen in public to be saying I'm not voting for the Trinamool Congress,
Right.
but we underplayed the Trinamool. I'm just asking you.
I'm replying.
My worry is always, have you this time, because your poll, the way I see it in UP, is predicated on one point. Men 44% BJP, 40% Samajwadi Party. Just a minute. Women 48% BJP, 32% Samajwadi Party. 16% gap versus 4%. You are saying women have voted as gender, not, we are on International Women's Day. Women have voted on the basis of gender, not on the basis of caste. Right?
No, I'm not saying this.
Effectively, that's what you're saying.
No, not at all. See, the Samajwadi Party has a social base alignment of MY, which is Muslim and Yadav, which is not the case in these two communities. Which is not the case in this community. The male and female vote difference in favor of BJP with this kind of substantial number, which is not the case. It is the case in all other caste group, even which is not the case in case of Jata vote, where female has voted more to BSP than to BJP.
No, sir, but you are saying men is 44-40,
Yeah,
women
that's
is
overall.
48-30 overall, 48 versus 32. That means 4 times as many women effectively in a household. There are at least 4 households out of 5 where the woman may have voted differently to the man. That's what you are effectively saying, that even if the male there has gone and voted for the Samajwadi Party, the woman in the house has gone and voted for the BJP. That's what you are claiming, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm claiming, but you have to see the vote percentage also of Samajwadi Party, which we are saying it is about 36%. And when you see the MY, which contribute 30% of it.
No, can I just explain that to our
And
viewers?
where there is no
When
difference
Pradeep
in male
Gupta
and female
says,
voting,
we had
difference.
Akhilesh Yadav saying, I'm fully confident I'm winning, and a lot of people who traveled to Uttar Pradesh also came back thinking SP is doing well. That's actually because if you compare with 2019 or even 2017, the SP's vote share is up about 14% according to Pradeep's data. So there is actually a jump. And if you compare with 2019, for example, the BJP is coming down from 51. So the BJP's overall vote share is coming, but because it's a 3-way fight and you're in a first past the post system, that still means that despite SP being on the way up, BJP being on the way down, the end result may not look very different.
And reason is very simple here, Rahul. You mentioned that BJP is coming down to 41%, but you have to keep in mind during general election, SP, BSP and RLD all three together fought. And what was the BJP's assembly segment lead? 284 seats. 284 seats when all these three groups fought together, meaning 30% of MY, 20% of Jata votes and 2% of Jat vote. All these were on the one side. What was the result? This contributes to 52% and they could gain 40% of total vote percentage. And BJP on the other hand 51%. So,
would this result have been different in your view had Akhilesh and Mayawati fought together?
of course, yes.
Would the BJP have lost?
I would not say lost, but it was, then it is neck to neck.
Rajdeep, you agree with this?
You know, very interestingly, someone actually told me today that this was the election for Mayawati and Akhilesh to tie up. Because this was a more localized election, unlike a national election where you can fight on emotional pan-Indian issues, Balakot, Pulwama as the 2019 election. This election, potentially, if they had agreed to work together, the question is also that there has to be some element of chemistry between them, not the arithmetic. But the arithmetic alone would have challenged the BJP. And I have another spin to it. If Mayawati had been the chief ministerial candidate and Akhilesh backing her, better chance. Why? Because female plus the Dalit vote would
plus
then have...
lawlessness wouldn't have been as big a problem.
Sorry?
Lawlessness wouldn't have been as big a problem, which holds the SP back.
My sense is, and this is subject to correction, that Yadav Raj, the prospect of Yadav Raj tends to antagonize or tends to alienate a lot of non-Yadavs.
In Bihar also the same thing happened with Tejasvi.
In Bihar, the Yadavs are larger, 16%. So you can carry many more seats just with the MY combination, Muslim Yadav. In UP, that's more difficult. But had Mayawati been your chief minister, Akhilesh in a supporting role, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra Congress, 3 to 5%, whatever they're
That's
getting.
wishful thinking.
No, all of them had.
Khayali pulao, you're building castles in the air.
Boss, Rahul, it is ample evidence, and this is the old Prannoy Roy theory of the 1980s, Index of Opposition Unity, IOU. If there is a close race, if it is a localized election, if the opposition is united against the premier dominated party, they have half a chance. But if you are this is what is happening in Goa. In Goa, there is clear evidence from Pradeep's poll, anti-incumbency against the BJP.
But you can't blame the BJP for that. How can you blame the BJP for that?
Not at all. Yeah. I'm not blaming them. I'm saying this is the reality of politics.
Let me put that question to Yashwant Deshmukh. Had Akhilesh and Mayawati hypothetically fought this election together, Pradeep Gupta suggested it would have been a much tighter race. It would have. Would the opposition possibly have trounced the BJP in that case, in your analysis? Yashwant?
Would have been possible. Would have been possible simply because keeping in mind that there is a definite Modi dividend for BJP in the Lok Sabha election. So the much larger number of people actually came out and ensured that they wanted to see Modi as the Prime Minister, continue to see him as a Prime Minister. Same would not have been the case, So I tend to agree with Rajdeep on this, that probably this was the election where BSP and SP should have gone together. But at the same time, many things are no more as direct traditional orthodox equationing nowadays that we tend to feel like, Rahul. I believe that we are way too rigid in looking at UP and Bihar in terms of caste arithmetics. I genuinely believe that we used to think that communal polarization, caste arithmetic was the base of the electoral equationing in UP Bihar, but things are changing, and I would like to humbly suggest that it is probably the time to look into the new vote banks which are cutting across the caste line, which is the women vote bank, which is the youth vote bank, and for them the issues are much more nuanced than what we tend to think that they are. And if the BJP manages to win Uttar Pradesh, it will be courtesy the female voters of the Uttar Pradesh and courtesy the social welfare schemes of the government that have been delivered.
Shantanu Gupta is the biographer of Yogi Adityanath. Now there are two different scenarios and I want your interpretation and analysis on both. One is the scenario that Pradeep Gupta is suggesting, which is 288, could be 300 plus for the BJP. What does that mean for Yogi as chief minister in the context of national politics? The other is a scenario where it's about 220 to 230. What would it mean in the second case as well? Shantanu.
I think, Rahul, first of all, we have to understand the 325 seats that the BJP Plus got last time was an aberration in itself. That happened, I think, that was the third time that happened ever in UP, even with combined UP with Uttarakhand. And I think Congress must have won those seats in 1960s, 70s, right? That's one. Whenever BSP or SP formed the complete majority government, it was of the range of 207 or 224. So comparing any performance with 320, 325 is not a fair comparison anyways, number one. Number two, I think we all know that what is the precedence in UP that no chief minister continued in a couple of decades. People going to Noida, people going to Bijnor never continued. All of those jinxes are already there. So I think we have to compare all of these when Yogi comes back. So even 220, and I will go with the vote share. I think we have seen historically that Samajwadi Party has a good conversion rate because of a constant Muslim vote bank in all seats across UP with 28, 29%, 30% vote share. They have formed governments. So even if we get 220, 220, 230 seats, which I think is not the probability, because though I'm not a pollster, but for my books, I have traveled to almost 35 districts in last 9 months. That's why I was looking for a poll yesterday, which will give over 270. For me, that was like very evident when I went. Like every village I went, I found 70-80% people telling me at least 7-8 schemes. Women came to me, ki lalla, 2000 rupees, 800 rupees, 700 rupees. They were showing these schemes in their mobile phones, the SMSs, right? So when I was seeing 220, I thought, no, that's not true. That's not what I. Though my approach can be a little anecdotal. Though I went to a lot of districts. So even with 220, I think we have to see that it's getting repeated, and the vote share is still 40%. When Sapa and Baspa formed government, they were at 30%. BJP has upped the game by 40%. They have retained at least at 40%, and that's the way I will look at it. Yeah, if it's 280, 290, I'm sure Yogi brand will, which is already big throughout India. I went to US during this election season, January. I went to almost 13 cities from there to in India. Multiple, like 2 days back, I was in Calcutta, then in Hyderabad, in multiple launches of my book. And Yogi brand I'm seeing is huge. Anyways,
you're also now
280
looking
will
a
make
bit
it even
like
further.
Yogi Adityanath. So that helps as well. I'm just joking. I'm just saying that half seriously. But Rajdeep, what does a 280 plus victory?
If you can give me 10 seconds. If you can just give me 10 seconds.
You're
Rahul.
welcome to a counter. Go on. Yes, Shantanu.
Rahul.
Itching to know what you're saying.
I was in a Hyderabad launch with Arvind Dharmapuri, if you know the member of Parliament from Nizamabad who has beaten Kavita. And he told on the stage that bald is bold, and we three share the same hairstyle. Him, me, and Yogi Adityanath. So yeah, in the same humor.
Okay, he's the biographer. Now he started looking like Yogi Adityanath as well. Okay, Rajdeep, 280 plus. What does this mean for Yogi Adityanath in the context of national politics?
Look, if Pradeep's numbers are right, it's a huge victory. The fact is that not since 1985, when the Congress won a second term, have we had a government being repeated. We've never had in the history of Uttar Pradesh a chief minister for 5 years who then gets re-elected. So it would be enormous for Yogi Adityanath. The fact that Mr. Modi is the MP from Varanasi, Prime Minister of the country, was a huge help. So therefore, Mr. Modi also in a sense on the tickets. All the schemes that are listed and which Shantanu just now spoke of are not just seen as Yogi Adityanath schemes. They are seen as the schemes of the central government as much as they are seen of the state government. Yogi Adityanath is a polarizing figure even now. There are those who are his strong supporters and there will be those who are...
But Akhilesh Yadav is polarizing, Mayawati is polarizing.
No, the fact is...
There are so many people who don't like Mayawati and her politics. So who is not polarizing?
No, the fact is that Yogi Adityanath today, within a larger group of people, has managed to establish himself as the leader number one.
That's what elections are about.
No, but just a minute, Rahul. The fact is that when you've got, like we say, MY combination is of Akhilesh Yadav. Mayawati was a Dalit leader till in 2007. She created a Sarvajan Samaj.
Now she's only a Jatav leader. Not even all the Dalits are with them. The non-Jatav Dalits, 50% plus are with the BJP.
Therefore, Yogi Adityanath in the 1990s would have been seen purely as a Hindutva leader, appealing to a very core section of the BJP. Yogi's achievement, if these numbers are right, is that he has moved beyond the core.
Which is a huge achievement.
That would be a huge achievement. That's why I said, if the numbers are right, Yogi Adityanath, who till the other day, especially when he first got elected from Gorakhpur in the 1990s as a sort of proponent of the Ram Mandir movement, as a proponent of aggressive Hindutva linked to the Hindu Vahini Sena, would have been seen as a leader of the BJP's core.
But he's mellowed down.
Now he will be seen as Hindutva plus. And that's why he has been able to get a wider constituency. Mayawati succeeded in 2007 by seeing
this is a very
Bahujan Plus.
This is a very deadly combination.
Just a word. Weakness of Akhilesh is that he has not yet been able to be seen as MY Plus. Elections are not won on your core. Elections are won when you get a plus vote.
Remember,
this will be seen as a plus vote for Yogi Adityanath.
The only other politician in modern times who's become a Hindutva plus leader is Prime Minister Modi. If Yogi Adityanath is able to hold on to the Hindutva base, add to it women, add to it Labhartis, add to it people who like what he's doing on development and governance, that positions him, Pradeep Gupta, in a very sweet spot in the context of the next 10-15 years of Indian politics.
Rahul, I suggest on a lighter note that India Today group should commission the study whom people want on a national scene, Yogi or Modi, on across the country, and we will tell you what is the result.
No, they'll all say Prime Minister Modi.
No, I'm
they say?
going forward saying in the future.
No, but
You see, the fact, Rahul, is you use the word Labharti. This Labharti Varg or the Labharti voter needs to be analyzed, because surely benefits of welfare schemes cut across traditional caste and community loyalties. And increasingly we are finding there is only, that can be the only explanation why the BJP now, if they won these numbers that Pradeep is saying, would have won their 4th consecutive victory with more than 40% of the vote. And you can't win that only with your core. The Labharti voter who is supporting the BJP today has gone beyond the original community caste loyalties of UP. Once we understand that, then whether it is Yogi Adityanath, whether it is Narendra Modi, how you choose to apportion the credit for it, the fact is that this is a reality that the opposition is going to have to deal with.
Shantanu Gupta, this question, you speak a lot to Yogi Adityanath. How does he see this question about being a potential successor to Prime Minister Modi?
I think he always says, I think that's too far-fetched, and I'm a Karyakarta, I'll go back to the mutt whenever party requires. But I think whenever I am asked this question multiple times, I think Narendra Modi has trained many people for being in at least top 4 CCS in future, and Yogi Adityanath is for sure is one of the candidates. See, if he wins this term, which he is winning as per every poll, right? If he wins this term, by the time he completes this term, he'll be only 53. He'll be 19 years in the parliament and 10 years as a chief minister of a state like Uttar Pradesh, which is were to be a country, were to be 5th most populous country in the world. So I think with 53 years, no politician in the world will have such a CV. That you are in the national parliament for 19 years and you are head of a state as big as Uttar Pradesh. So I think he's popular. He's electorally relevant. I've been to his rallies in Karnataka where people hardly understood what he was speaking.
Can I ask you, Shantanu,
and people were 2-3 lakh people there just to see Yogi Adityanath.
But can I ask you, Shantanu, has Yogi Adityanath completely shed his past of being a leader of the Hindu Vahini Sena? Has he completely given up that? Let's be clear, in this election, Yogi Adityanath seems to walk on 2 tracks. One is as an administrator providing welfare schemes. The other is also as seen as a leader of an aggressive brand of muscular Hindutva. When he uses his bulldozer analogy, when he uses the politics of Talibani mindset, when he talks about Abba Jan, surely there is that element of Yogi Adityanath which is attractive to a core, and then there is the incremental voter who's coming possibly because of the welfare scheme. Would you agree with that?
I think Rahul just said that Narendra Modi is the only politician who had that Hindutva plus element along with governance, along with security. And when I went to the field, I heard Modi Yogi names almost interchangeably. People used to say, Modi Yogi ji se ration aaya, Modi Yogi ji ki scheme. And they used to use this term as a pair, as a couple. And at times they used to say, Baba ka bulldozer and Modi ka ration. Right? They used to relate ration with Narendra Modi and the welfare with Narendra Modi and this law and order. And bulldozer went to Vikas Dubey's house also, not only Mukhtar Ansari. I think if you see the 70-80 cases which are quoted in my book where bulldozer was very useful, they have some Gujjar name, there are some Jat names, multiple Muslim names also, and couple of names which are non-Muslims also. Only thing I think, Rajdeep, it so happens in a 50-minute speech of Narendra Modi and Yogi Adityanath, they speak a lot of data on toilets, on houses. I think because that doesn't not sexy for on TV debates. We pick that Abba Jan, we pick the cycle pay bomb. I think that's also we have to give it to be the panelists and journalists that we only pick the juicy part. And we remain the boring data also.
I'm not denying that Ration and Shasan were 2 words we heard a lot on the road in Uttar Pradesh. I'm asking you though, whether the anti-Muslim image of Yogi Adityanath as defined when he started the campaign in 80-20 terms, is that still a factor or not? That in Uttar Pradesh there is a subtext where people believe that Muslims now were appeased in the Samajwadi Party era are now finally no longer being given those benefits. When Yogi Adityanath says, for example, कि हम दिवाली पर वही करते हैं जो ईद पर करते हैं, somewhere he's sending out a message that we will not appease Muslims. Does that attract his voters or not?
I'm sure it does. Anything which goes with Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and we have seen that how this country ran on appeasement to the level that Manmohan Singh said the resources of this country, the first right is on minorities. I think that statement irritated a lot of people. Even if you go back to the history, Hindu Mahasabha never wanted a special treatment for Hindus. He said, do same treatment for everyone. So I think, and if you see that kind of fairness, Yogi Adityanath like he is the embodiment of Hindutva, right? He's a sant in itself, and from a Nath Panth which come from Adinath Shiva. And it is one of the biggest cult from Afghanistan to Karnataka, even sects in Tamil Nadu and Kerala. I visited most of the Nath Panth mutt. So for sure that. But when you see his governance, like if I got the chance to sit in a couple of meetings, and the terms like data, comparison, QR code, dashboard is very common vocabulary of Yogi Adityanath. Only thing, we have not heard that speeches much. We have only heard those electorally charged speeches.
So when he
That's
came
why
to our
a lot of people
event,
tried to
the
paint him in a
Panchayat
certain
Lucknow,
fashion. But how he governed last 5 years, I think people have seen.
A lot of the development data on his fingertips. Specifics, I saw also instances of him correcting his officials on some specifics of how many houses had been built, for example. And therefore, he's obviously got a pro-development side to him, which many analysts, because of their hatred for Yogi Adityanath, because of their hatred for that brand of politics, simply have failing to acknowledge. And the point here is they made the same mistake, Rajdeep, with Prime Minister Modi. The same seems to be happening despite the last mistake which they were caught out on, and they seem to be repeating history.
You know, my only belief is there is a darker side also that should be looked at. Journalists being arrested and charged under sedition, the fear factor, the manner in which Yogi Adityanath works through bureaucrats primarily, virtually disregards even elected MLAs of his party. I'm not saying that's necessarily always a negative, but there is an anti-Muslim image as seen during anti-CA. What did the Supreme Court say recently about the manner in which properties were confiscated even of small rickshaw drivers from Lucknow? They asked for those properties to be returned. So let's not kid ourselves that Yogi Adityanath has transformed himself into a development icon. He has done successfully, you could argue, as you said, what Narendra Modi did. It's a journey in politics. He started from
and
somewhere.
he's mellowed down. Look at his interviews from before 2017 to now. I interviewed him on Seedhi Baat when he was an MP. He was a firebrand leader. He's far more mature. He's hardly, unless he did so deliberately, put a wrong step or said a wrong word in his 5 years. He's a very, very changed man, Rajdeep.
Well, you know, I would say there are two sides to him. Like there are, depending on the audience, when he's speaking to Rahul Kanwal, he may speak very differently to when he speaks, let's say, if he's an audience before the Hindu Sant Sadhu Samaj. There are two Yogi Adityanaths. As there are all of, you know, we speak maybe differently at times to different audiences. There is no doubt he's far more electable today to a larger grouping than he was 20 years ago. There is absolutely no doubt that this Labharti idea has clicked. If the numbers are right, to my mind, ration was a very important element, particularly in COVID times when there were questions over the government's initial handling of COVID.
He was the only chief minister who was out and about. Soon after he recovered from COVID, he went district to district, mobilizing the administration.
You have hit the nail on the head. To my mind, 7 months ago, chief ministers were tested. They were tested in COVID-1 and tested in COVID-2. Those who succeeded have been rewarded by voters. Pinarayi Vijayan in Kerala is a good example who defeated anti-incumbency. Yogi Adityanath and his government came under severe criticism in the first couple of weeks of COVID 2.0. However, their COVID management subsequent to that, whether it is in terms of relief material, and I saw those ration packets, they were genuinely reaching those who needed them most, has definitely helped him. That doesn't mean I'm going to not ignore the darker side of Yogi Adityanath's years as a Hindu Vahini Sena, where Shantanu Gupta and I may have differences, but Yogi also comes from a very violent past. He has tried in his new avatar to obviously transform himself, and it's proving successful.
Okay, ultimately, elections and politics is about whether you can convince the majority to like what you're doing and vote for them. And if that's what's happening, that's something that needs to be respected and acknowledged. And you have to see what the data is telling you. It is as simple as that, regardless of how it squares with your own political beliefs. Pradeep Gupta, you're all set for the 10th of March. You'll be a hunted man. Either you'll be doing a dance on the floor. Rajdeep, you'll join him for a dance if he gets it right.
Look, I think there's so much of stress today on these numbers. As I said, I came into the studio, somebody met me outside at some event and told me, "Arey Rajdeep, aap log sab big gaye ho."
Who's bought you?
I have no idea. Pradeep Gupta gives the numbers. I try and analyze them. I put a caveat if these numbers are right. But the fact is, unfortunately, Rahul, society is so polarized. If we get the numbers wrong, it is accused that we have sold out.
No, but tell
If
me
we get
one
it
thing.
right,
No, can I just say, if you do
I
a
don't know.
opinion poll, this
for
is
what?
prior to polling actually happening, then a charge can be leveled that maybe the poll swayed voters one way or the other. If you do a post-poll study, which is to dissect how voters said they voted, if actually that's what happened, who does it help? It helps nobody. It just creates stress for Rajdeep, for Pradeep and for me and for everybody else. And except understanding why people voted the way they did, there is nothing that changes. So you can get agitated, you can like it, you can dislike it, you can curse, you can abuse, or you can appreciate. But the data is what it is. We're just putting out the data.
no, the only good thing also, Rahul, is an exit poll doesn't influence voters.
Yeah, of course.
Voting
That's
is
why
over.
we do it, yeah.
It only will destroy my friend, poor Pradeep Gupta's couple of nights before Thursday. He cannot sleep at night. He woke
So are
me
you
up.
going to dance with him or not if he gets it?
Last-
right? Pradeep Gupta, are you going to dance or not?
Yeah, well, I am very happy to celebrate the fact if a pollster gets his poll right. What I don't like is every time motives being attached when maybe things don't go wrong.
It comes with the turf.
Sorry?
It comes with
I
the
think
turf.
it comes with the turf. I think, and let's be honest, I think exit polls by and large, provided they provide all their data, often are far more a better guide than maybe me just going out
Oh,
and
absolutely.
saying,
That's
Hawa is taraf.
No, because you've spoken to 1,21,000 people. It's the collective wisdom of those 1,21,000. Maybe it's not as representative as it should have been. Maybe they get some parts of it wrong, but directionally, I firmly believe a well-conducted post-poll study is the most reliable barometer of voting preferences that we have, not just in India, but globally. That's just statistical reality. Now, sometimes those polls are wrong, so you can question it and call it black magic. It's not. There is science behind what's done. It's very academically driven and thoroughly researched. I've seen the kind of painstaking labor that goes into bringing this poll together. So it's not jiggery pokery. It's not some black magic. It's not as if he's doing it because the BJP, the Congress are asking him to do so. It's a lot of effort that goes in. Hopefully, it will be vindicated. If not, that's fine. We'll live with that. We'll take the blame. If yes, then Pradeep Gupta and Rajdeep have full rights to come out on the floor above. That's the election intelligence dashboard. It's all set and ready to go. We're calling it EI 2.0. We've redesigned it, so lots of very fascinating live insights, and that's the power of that machine. Live insights of the kind that you won't see on any other network. We'll be up at 7 a.m. on Thursday. On that election intelligence dashboard, we'll tell you how the numbers are being counted in a way that absolutely no other network can. I guarantee that. Slipping into a break, Pradeep, get some rest. Don't be stressed. And Rajdeep, you get some rest as well.
Thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow evening at 8. And Rajdeep comes up on the other side of a quick break. I'll have more for you on Ukraine when we come back after the break. Stay with us.